So today we're going to have a swift chat with Mitch. Mitch, welcome. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Thank you, Timothy. So, I've been in the real estate space well over 20 years now. I started off as an investor. In fact, my wife and I, we did this part-time while doing our 9 to 5. But about 5 years ago, we were able to basically transition out full-time into being a real estate investor. So we do the investment side of it. We're now into, we buy single-family homes, pre-construction condos, and multifamily apartments. We're doing some construction where we do additions to apartment buildings, and also we're doing a lovely program or project out in Hamilton where we're converting a 150-year-old building where the last use was office, and now we're converting it to an apartment, 8-unit apartment building.
Wow.
So we love doing that, and I also spend a lot of time coaching and developing. I also work with a company called Keyspire, where I'm one of their mastermind coaches as well, helping people who want to come into the journey of real estate to learn how to do it so that they don't make the mistakes many of us made way back when, right?
Yeah. So you basically retired from your 9 to 5 and you're doing your investment and your coaching full time.
Exactly, that's correct.
Wow.
So I gave up 9 to 5 and I work much harder, longer hours, but it's the satisfaction is incredible. So going back to that world, I don't know. Can't see it happening.
Well, from my aspect as a realtor as well, it's like I like working for myself. I've had businesses for many years in different fields. And I found more satisfaction by doing things on my own. And so it's like it's my fault, not anyone else's. So
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It's so true. Many of us, we talk about that, right? The journey into the 9 to 5 world is important. Got to pay the bills, but it can also be quite frustrating for a lot of people. Like I talk to thousands of people on in my program with coaching and one-to-one program and what have you. And a lot of them they just want to get out of that, out of the 9 to 5 race to get into real estate. So if you're coming into the space and you need to buy a home, I mean that's great on you. That is quite an accomplishment.
Mhm.
But then if you want to take it to the next level, I often tell people, if you can get one investment property, just one, in your lifetime, still stay with your job, because a lot of people also love their jobs. Not everybody want to leave.
Yep.
Um, but one property could make the whole difference for you. Far too often we get people getting into the RRSPs or going to the insurance companies and buying RESPs and trying to invest their dollars, and it fluctuates up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, think about if you were able to just come up with 20% down payment of a property that you like in a great market.
Hmm.
So let's say this property costs you $1 million. You only need $200,000 to get you in.
Hmm.
You're able to purchase that property with the help of tenants needing a home and you helping provide that home. So you're already contributing to society significantly. Over the period of 20 years, that property would go up in value significantly. Like today, we say it's $1 million basically to buy a home, single detached home or some townhomes.
In some markets,
In some markets,
not
yes.
in this market.
But the logic is still the same in the sense that your $1 million over 20 years could be now 5 million,
Right.
right? So you want to talk about hedging against inflation? This is the best way to do it. The Canadian market and more so the Ontario market within Canada is one of the best markets in the world uh, as an investor, simply because we're still considered a young, uh, Toronto is still considered young. The whole province as a whole is still growing and developing in leaps and bounds. We still have so much, strong population growth from immigration, highly skilled people coming into the province that really and truly we're now touching the surface. And now people are getting into the realization that we can't depend on a government pension for retirement,
Right.
and we cannot depend on some companies, their pension plans don't exist anymore.
Right.
and the Canadian CPP is never going to take care of you.
Yep.
So the best way is you could passively invest in a property or two, right? Depending on where you want to go with your business, obviously. But passively, you can get into that stream, and in 20 years when you retire, or 25 years time you retire, this asset is growing over time. Tenants are helping you pay for that asset, and you benefit from being the owner. You're taking on all the risk,
Right.
right? So there is opportunities for risk takers at the end of the day.
Right.
So to me, it's one of the best ways to really plan for your retirement, plan for your kids, because also you have university, you
Mm.
have weddings, you have so many life events that's going to come
Right.
up on you, whether you like it or not. We all grow every year, whether we like it or not. And so, how do you hedge against it? Well, this is one of the ways.
So Mitch, how did you get started?
I'm an accident investor. And why I say that is because, when we came to this country, my wife and I, we just, we just went through the whole process of getting integrated, finding a job, trying to work the career. And then we wanted to have a family going, so we went from renter to homeowner. And that was a big change, as it were, and turned out to be an incredible journey, going from that concept of being a renter to being a homeowner. And being a homeowner was incredible. Like, we bought a single detached home, 40 foot, and back in them days was considered extra wide lot, double car garage, 4 bedroom. And because you're a first time home buyer, you were literally buying it at 5% down payments, right? Now, when we did that, the family was growing again, so this our second baby was on its way. We decided to upgrade, but we purchased one of the pre-construction homes. So obviously you have to wait a year before you get that. And during that year, we had lots of debates. Do we sell? Do we keep? What do we do? So we've often seen so much success stories around people, owning real estate. We decided we'll give it a try. So we were going to take two mortgages. Um, we definitely wanted to make sure that we have the right fit. So while we took on the new home, bigger home, that became the primary home. The home that we were in, we said, okay, we'll rent it and we'll find an agent that could help us get tenants and kind of bring us along so that we're doing it the right way. Well, we definitely found the broker. They helped us find the tenants. These were the tenants from hell, but we didn't know that till two or 3 months in.
You and everyone else in the market at the moment. Yes, that's one of the things that I think makes people shy away from investing in real estate is the tenants issues. So
Absolutely.
how did you deal with your
It was really a shocker. We were like, okay, this is what we paid for, I guess. But was it frustrating? Absolutely. Was it a big learning curve for us? Absolutely. Because we learned how to deal with police calls, we learned how to deal with neighbors' complaints, we learned how to go through the tribunal process, we learned how to get an eviction. And, it was two things were going to happen at that point in time. It's either we get out of this thing and no more, or we stick with it. And funny enough, we stuck with it. So we were literally taking stuff out. The paralegal that we worked with said, look, these people, they left, when they agreed to leave, they left a whole bunch of stuff. He said, look, take it, just put it in the garage, text them that it's there, let them take their stuff if they need to. After about a week, you can dump it. So we did that. Put all whatever they left back, we put it there. I sent them the text, cleaned up the house, and we rented it. Again, this time I figured, since we paid for that kind of clientele, we couldn't do worse than that. So we started evaluating our own tenants, and we did a pretty good job, knock on wood, considering the situation. Now we've you've been doing this for a long time. So over the 20-year period, we've had some amazing people that absolutely wonderful to deal with. And we still had some crappy people come in over the period of time. But what you got to remember is this is my property. And yes, we're going to go through some frustration. That's why when you're doing this business, it's important to do the right way. If you really want to get into it, I mean, again, we provide training and development for people who want to learn to become investors simply because there's things in there that you need to learn. And it's better you learn it from somebody than you learn it the hard way. But we've kept that property going, and what was the purchase on that property was just over 200,000, $225,000. Today it just got appraised for $1.1 million. So is the headaches and the frustration part of the journey? Yes. You got to remember it's a business you're running now, and I always like to train people along that value system, because even with me, one of the workshops we do is we call it the business development workshop.
Mhm.
The minute you start buying a second home and a third home and a fourth home and you want to become an investor, you're really becoming a business person. So I focus a lot on, this is a business you're running. Here are the hurdles you're going to encounter. Here's the solutions for it. And you got to keep yourself thinking like a business, right?
Mhm.
Ups and downs, ups and downs. But at the end of it, where are you?
Mhm.
And if you're still in the black, still doing well, the business is growing, then yeah, then you're running a successful business. But you got to shift the thought process to being a business person.
Right. And you've been through several ups and downs in the market since you started, because based on the numbers you were saying, it's like, yeah, you've been through a couple of dips and dives, as they say.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
how did you manage those types of things?
Part of your planning, one thing you got to learn, when you're getting the rent money coming in, even though you call it cash flow, it's cash flow, but it's not spending money. Keep a reserve.
Mhm.
Always bank a reserve in your real estate business. You never know when the tenants are going to stop paying rents. You never know when the market is going to dip. Like right now, um, the rent rates in Ontario is starting to soften up.
Mhm.
Um, shouldn't be, because again, interest rate is high, but we know they've just made some policy changes that affects it. You're gonna have cash crunch any point in time during your journey. So you gotta always treat it like a business. Where's my reserve? Or do I have a line of credit? Or do I have a operating line of credit with the banks that I can tap into when I need it? You really have to be planned for that. There's also unexpected expenses, and some of these expenses in real estate can be quite expensive. I mean, a
Mhm.
roof is not cheap, heating system is not cheap, windows are not cheap. Even though we talk about laminate flooring being cheap, when you're doing an entire property, it's not
Not
cheap.
cheap. Mhm.
So you really have to think along the lines of, okay, I'm building this up because we're gonna have to put it back into the property,
Yep.
right? But again, you got to know that that property is in the right market, and this is where experts like yourself, Timothy. This is where people don't realize the value. They just think about commission, commission, commission. But when you get the right team, the right brokerage, like for me, we work with brokers. We don't, and your group, REC, and all of these guys are a big part of our business model as well. The value they bring is incredible because you're putting me in the right place, the right market. You're doing all of the research. And the thing is, you have access to data that we wouldn't even begin to see as consumers.
Right.
So to me, the biggest value is really build a relationship with your with your real estate agents,
Mhm.
because you guys are going to give us gold at the end of the day. Yes, you earn your money, because people don't realize that the depth of work that's involved when an agent is working for you. They think, okay, he's just cashed out on 2.5%, 1%, 5%, whatever that number looks like.
Mhm.
Honestly, they've earned that money and beyond. Because while you might earn, let's say 50,000, 100,000, whatever, yeah, that's great. Over the next 20 years, I could earn 1 million. And that's because you helped me get there.
Right.
So I always tell people, be careful about this commission conversation, because what you want is, you want the value that they bring. You want the full market research. You want the relationship. You want something that makes sense for me so that I could buy confidently,
Right.
right?
Right.
And to me, that's just a big learning experience that I got, realizing it's not the nickel and dime, it's the long game, it's the long play. So, working with agents to me is one of the best value you could bring when you're going into the journey of becoming an investor.
So do you buy and hold or buy and sell, or do you vary depending on the market conditions? Because I know when the prices are going up, a lot of people try to chase that.
Right.
Others are like, no, and like the rents were up 6 months ago and now they're not. So some people are getting out because their mortgage rates are going up because they had this 5 year that's now expired. We're seeing all of this unsettledness in the market right now. Does that bother you, or have you like done that? Like we know because of this and that, and we've set our reserves and we're fine. Because we've seen this happen downtown in downtown Toronto. The investors are jumping out because now the rents don't cover their costs because they're going from a 1% mortgage to a minimum of a 4.5% mortgage, and they can't cover their cost. And their taxes have gone up, of course, because the city's taxes have gone up almost 20% in 2 years. So there's a lot of those folks that like bought really cheap or bought pre-con, got a mortgage through, the builder for literally nothing at the time. And now they're like, and they're just dumping. Does that sound like a good investment strategy, or is that someone that really didn't plan?
Yeah, that's the reality, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's timing the market is more like speculation,
Hmm.
right? And when you're into speculation, you're gonna win some big and you're gonna lose some big. So you're gambling. Real estate allows you to gamble if you so wish, and we know a lot of people have made some significant money, especially in the Toronto condo markets over the last 20 years.
Right.
This year, or rather last year, 2023, 2024, we've seen a big impact on the market simply because policy change happened,
Mhm.
oversupply based on demand, right? But again, these are numbers that we kind of knew in advance. And then the ability for people to get qualified for mortgages also was significantly impacted.
Mhm.
So we have not solved any of the housing problems across the country.
Right.
Yet we talk about oversupply and inventory sitting idle. And yeah, people are dumping, they're cutting their losses because they probably can't afford to carry the cash flow, right? They don't have enough of a reserve. Maybe their jobs have changed. So it's a little bit of a difficult market right now. The economy as a whole is being impacted. So some people are pushed into a position where they really don't have a choice but to sell. But a lot of the investors as well, they look at it and say, okay, let's just get rid of this asset and move on. But it's really you have to identify your goals. For me, we don't try to speculate the market. Whatever we purchase, we want to purchase and hold for the long term, right? Like I said, you own a property for 25 years, for 30 years, you're gonna recover a lot based on what you paid at the day one. Um, there is always that cash concern. I mean, somebody's got to pay the mortgages. Um, let's face it, Ontario, the tenant rules are not fair to landlords, especially small landlords.
Yes.
And tenants are now professional tenants. They understand the rules and regulations. And so a lot of them are taking advantage of that. They're not paying rents, they're cheating people, they're allowed to cheat legally because of the tenant rules. So hopefully at some point in time, government will recognize that it's an unfair playing field and make it fair. You need to live, you need a place to live, you need to pay for that. Because the guy who's managing that is not the government, it's a individual trying to build their future too.
Right.
So it's the scales is twisted, it needs to just get to a balanced space. Until then, landlords need to figure it out. But that's kind of like a long-winded answer to do we buy or do we sell? Well, real estate is buy and hold. If you really want to build wealth,
Yep.
it comes from buy and hold.
Right.
Don't depend on cash flow in today's market. The interest rates are not there. Too much fluctuations in the rental rates right now. So cash flow is not gonna get you anywhere. Break even is actually considered pretty good at this point in time.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
if you can hold on to your property over time, I think it makes a difference. I'll just share with you a quick stat just to give you a sense of it.
Mm.
So we know that condos condo production or construction in the last several years was averaging 25,000 units in Ontario, in
Yep.
Toronto
Yep.
specifically.
Mhm.
And last year, because again, government was, there's not enough housing. We know from other social networks, not enough housing. Developers ramped up production and they went to 50,000 units. 50,000 units is double the market. And then you have a crunch of high interest rates and people who were buying could not qualify for mortgages. So that created a mess. So the buyer became a renter, right? And again, where do rents go? There's only so much salary you get. So how do you pay? Like what you have right now is landlords subsidizing renters because a lot of their rents are in the high 2000s into 3000s for simple properties, and their rents might be $1,900 to $2,500, right? Now we're seeing movements into the 3000 range, but again, how many people can afford that? So you don't mind supplementing it for a short period of time because eventually you will recover that money,
Right.
let's say in 5 years or 10 years time.
Yep.
So the buy and hold strategy is important. Now, with the stats I was talking about, so we doubled up production, but then when you look at future productions, I think this year we're going to go back down to roughly 25,000 units being produced.
Yep.
And then the following years is just going to fall off a cliff. So if you can hold on to your properties from 2023, sorry, 2024, and you can hold on 2 or 3 years' time, we still haven't solved the housing problems.
Right.
Chances are the market dynamics would kick back in if government don't put some more crazy policies in place.
Yep.
And then you'd see the market would actually lift the value of those properties. And then you as the investor, you can recover.
So what we have seen through Signature and Urban Nation is that 25,000 is this year and next year.
Uh-huh.
But the ones this year were bought at 1,200 a square foot or 1,300 a square foot. Resales 950. So some of those are just going to go back into supply because people are walking away from these 150, $200,000 deposits, seeing
Yeah,
it every day. Next year, those units were sold at 1,500 to 1,600 a square foot. Resale is still going to stay at 950 a square foot. So there's going to be this huge amount of money going to the developers, and they're going to have these units to sell. So that third year, because the big developers have stopped breaking ground. I think they broke ground in the last quarter for 8,000 units total. And it's like, okay. Uh, and for 2 years, they're not going to do anything. So
right.
all their employees are going somewhere else. They'll start and they'll need employees. They can't find them. They're 3 years out from a new building. So in that 5 year span, prices are going to do this again, and rents are going to do this again because right now the first time buyers are just they're getting ready to come back in the market real tentatively, and they're the ones that drive the market. So people think, oh no, it's a big high end. It's like the high end people, they don't need mortgages.
That's right.
They don't need that. Hey, Bernie, hey, Berto, I'll edit this. Um, and so, those first time buyers are like, okay, now there's incentives to help them get their deposits, and they don't need CMHC. They've got extra, there's a little bit more wiggle room in the 30-year plan. So those rules have really been beneficial to try to get those people to drive the market because people think, oh, it's, these $1 million people who are driving the market. It's like, no, it's the first time buyers will drive the market because those people who've been wanting to sell and move up don't have a buyer. Now
That's
they're
right.
going to have buyers. And so it'll pull that middle market. And it's like, yes. And I think for us having, as you're saying, more information that most of the public doesn't have. It's like understanding mortgages. Most people don't understand mortgages. Like, oh yeah, the Bank of Canada rate comes down, the mortgage comes down. I was like, no, not necessarily. It's one of those things I cover in my training because it's important for people to understand. It's like you've got a bond and you've got Bank of Canada, and it's like where I was just looking at it before we came on, and it's like I think we're just about where the fixed and the adjustable will be about the same here in the next 6 months,
Yeah,
and that's where the adjustable is going to become the advantage because this one's not going anywhere.
that's
If there's a
it.
recession or the bond rate or whatever.
That's right.
Bruno,
Um,
hey, lie down.
Bruno wants to do his own thing.
Yeah, well, he hears something, he starts barking. Um, so let's move on to that as we're talking about financing and things. Where does someone get money to start? Because I mean, you get your first mortgage, you're great. Well, your second mortgage is like, and then I have an investor per se who has four properties. He can't get a mortgage on a fifth from a bank, and he struggles with that. So how does that all get arranged with someone wanting to invest, say, in multifamily units?
Yeah, so multifamily units is a different game altogether. But typically 3 to 5 units, most people with a 9 to 5 can get up to.
Hmm.
After that, basically the bank says your debt ratios are too much,
Hmm.
They don't want you getting more credit from them. So that's where you pivot. That's when you start pivoting and start getting into what we call OPM, other people's money.
I
Yeah.
love your term OPMs, other people's money. So
Mhm.
tell me what that looks like.
Mhm. So yeah, so now you're coming into the space of being an investor, a serious investor. So this is where now you're an entrepreneur, you're a business person, and you got to start thinking along that way. You also got to invest in education, invest into communities where you have access to these things. Now they're there, they're existing, but it's an investment. A lot of times people come into the space, they want to learn and grow. So that they could get to the next level. So for me, it's almost like, okay, how do we do that? So access to OPM, you got to be in the presence of other peoples, because now you can join forces, you can do joint venturing, you can bring people together, pool your money together, and you can buy these buildings, you can buy residential, whatever you want to do. But apartment buildings, it's definitely a different game. It's now you're really into the commercial space. You're definitely hands-on, running a business, right? That's how the banks would look at it as well. They're no longer interested in your income, believe it or not. They still want to have everything, know everything about you, so you don't get away. But they're more interested now in what does the building do? Can the building sustain the mortgage payments? Can they sustain some of the renovations that they might need? And if the numbers work out from the banking side, then yeah, then they're all in. Then you actually it's easier to fund, believe it or not. We've had instances where we bought $4 and $5 million buildings and we got through far easier than trying to close a condo.
Wow.
So it's a different game because now you're into cash flow, you're into cash operations, you have property management. The building should be able to sustain itself, right? If it does not, obviously, um, you won't be able to move ahead with that. Um, but again, the bank is also interested in your level of experience and expertise. So while we talk about the fact that it's a simpler instrument to get in terms of investment as you grow, there's also a lot of risk that you're taking on. So if it's done incorrectly, you could be liable for a lot of money, that you don't necessarily want to have to deal with. But if you invest the time, find a mentor, get somebody that you can learn from. I mean, we provide a multifamily training as well, just because of that.
Mhm.
That allows people to buy these buildings um, in a much more confident way, simply because you want to make sure you're doing it right. But if it can be done right, think about the power of what I just said. You can buy that without having to worry about what your salary is. I mean, that's game changing. You go buy a
Mhm.
condo again, number five condo, they may not give you that credit. They may not give you that mortgage because, again, as far as they're concerned, they don't recognize all of the rent coming in from those residential homes. Um, but they do on the apartment building, right? I think in fact, I don't even know if they removed the stress test. I should find that out.
Nope,
So
not
you're
yet.
still under a stress test as well. So you're buying residential. Look at what you have to do. You're still pushed into this fictitious rate
Yep.
that doesn't exist, but you got to live by it,
Yep.
right? Again, policy, but all the rules, all the policies are made up. Somebody sits in an office and, I don't know what's the process they use, but they just come up with these solutions.
Yes, they're called risk managers. Uh, and when they start changing them, they change all the rules. And we've seen this happen quite,
Yes, and it
quite
feels
readily.
whimsical.
Yeah, very whimsical. It's like out of the hat. Here we go.
That's right. Today we'll be doing this. Put a stress test on so people can't buy.
So staying focused on the multifamily or the apartment building, say 8, 12 units. Uh, so they're going to look at the bankroll, so you know the vacancy percentage, the amount of rent, uh, your expenses if you're paying the hydro and the water and the management fees and the taxes and all of those things. And they determine then from percentage of debt to ratio from those numbers alone.
Yeah, they look at the building performance. So yes, so the rent roll is important, right? The rent, what's your operating expenses? That's important because again, now you're a business. Your rent is your income,
Yep.
your operating expenses is your expenses, and then what remains is your net operating income. And from that, you should be able to pay your mortgage. If the numbers don't work, then you gotta rejig the numbers in the sense that maybe you have to put a bigger down payment so that the numbers can work for you. Once the numbers are working, most lenders will lend you because they know the building has the strength, the financial strength to do so. Now, condition of property is also important. You
Right.
won't get away from that. A lot of people want to understand if there's any contamination, so environmental reports are also required. So the investor in the multifamily space usually is spending quite a few $1,000s before they even go firm on a deal. So this is why I say, you got to be careful in the sense that get educated before you jump into that space of trying to buy multifamilies, just because you want to make sure you understand what you're doing
Mhm.
and then you do it right. Once the numbers work on the building, the numbers work. So what I mean by that is if you hit the right ratios, most banking institutions, they look at about a 1.2 to 1.25 debt coverage ratio. Then you, depending on the condition of the building, what you're doing with the building, affordability factors, energy factors, you can also get some government incentives in place. Their debt ratios are more like 1.1, so it gives you the opportunity to get ownership much better. So there's a lot of things to learn around it, but once you do, now you're really into real estate business. Now instead of doing, 5 or 6 residential homes or condominiums and stuff like that, you're buying one building. Now you have to plan against property management and all this fun stuff, but you're really working in a business environment now. So these numbers really have to make sense. The bank is still going to look at you, just so you know, not because the rents are good means that you get away. They still want to know everything about you because understanding you as the owner is part of their risk management, right? Most buildings would go in a company's name. Most residential type purchases will go in a person's name. So what's the difference? The difference is I could buy a building tomorrow with my company name, and 7 days later I can go bankrupt on the company. And that's not good for the lender, right?
Mhm.
Because their recourse is really against the company. So that's why they will want to know everything about you. You'll also have to go down the road of providing personal guarantees, simply because part of their risk structure is nobody can walk away and leave them hanging, right?
Mhm.
So I mean, that's that's their business. So you having a good resume as well. Sometimes, let's say I've seen people coming in the space. I want to buy $50, $24. I want to buy $100. I want to buy $500. Great. What's your experience? I don't have anything. I just have that dream because somebody said, if you're going to buy a $6, why not buy $60, right? Um, they're not going to lend you because
Mhm.
your resume does not reflect the person who can run that business. And this is a business that the money could disappear quite quickly if you're not efficient.
Mhm. So do you do property management as well, or do you have someone do that for you?
We do property management on some of our assets, like mainly the single family homes and stuff. We
Mm-hmm.
do that.
Mm-hmm.
But any property with six or more doors, we hire property managers.
Okay.
Still a lot of work because they do all the heavy lifting, but you're still in discussions with them quite frequently to make sure things are in place, things are getting done, and there's always something that comes up that surprises you.
There always is. Now, do your property managers live on site, or you have bigger corporations that do that?
It depends.
Okay.
We don't really have the managers living on the property, but what we would have is like a supervisor or somebody that's working with us, just to be able to have eyes at the property itself. Especially the bigger the property, then you'll get into that level. And
Yeah.
the management company needs to be more than just a one guy kind of operation. Not that it doesn't work, it works for smaller properties,
Yeah.
but you do want to have that depth where there's different divisions, like you have people that are available to go and do renovations and repairs. You have paralegals divisions, you have the property management side itself. So depending on where you're buying, it's always good to really find that property management company that has the scale to take care of the operations, because it can be quite a lot.
Especially the legal stuff. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly. Oh,
I've had too many clients with bad experiences with the landlord tenant board, especially during COVID.
yeah.
Nightmare. Uh, it, I was like, it was one of those things. It's like, I don't think I want to do this. I don't think I want to do this.
Yeah, it's a absolute royal pain,
Hmm.
because the tenant boards just have a don't care attitude, and typically they don't care about landlords. Everybody seems to think that landlords are just buying a property and they sip champagne all day and things is good.
Yeah.
You don't know the grief the family goes through trying to maintain, to pay the mortgages. You have the same government. You just throw out a number, 20% raise in property taxes. That same government tells you, the landlord, I'm raising your property tax by 20%. You can only raise 2.5% in
Right.
your. So this is the government that creates the rules. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Like I say, there's no balance. And we're driven by the same entity, the government. So on the one hand, they're doing that. Utility companies pretty much run by the government as well. Their increases over the last couple of years has been insane.
Hmm.
Okay. When you look at what you're paying now for utilities, um, property taxes and stuff, you start thinking, okay, that's 1 month's rent. So now I'm down to 11 months. And then you have other property taxes. That's another set of money. Then you have property
Yeah.
management. So you're really living on what, 2 or 3 months of the rent,
Right.
because everybody's taking it out and
Right.
nobody's giving you the
Right.
option to be a level playing field. The only province that has it right now where it makes absolute sense is Alberta. Alberta has found a fair playing field. If you live, you need to pay for your living expense. And this government here in the other provinces, Ontario, BC, Quebec, they force landlords to subsidize tenants. Very disadvantageous, because what government needs to do is to take responsibility for their social services. If they want to subsidize, then let the tenants apply to the government for subsidies, and you pay the landlords a fair market price so they can upkeep and maintain the properties. I like to use the US because we're also in the US, in the Florida market.
Mhm.
They have the HUD program where basically tenants who can't pay rents go to
Yep.
that program.
Yep.
They get evaluated and
Yep.
they're determined to truly qualify for this. Then that HUD program places them in a home or in an apartment, and the landlord is paid fair market rent.
Right.
And every year the lease is renewed at fair market rent, because they want the properties to be properly maintained.
Yep.
Government here fluffs their responsibilities onto landlords, and with the majority of landlords here, the small guys. The big guys, they have different indexes and different funds, and they can weather the whole thing about low rents or whatever. But the small guys are being
Yep.
beaten up and taken full advantage of. And nobody seems to want to take on the fight to say, make it an even playing field. We
Right.
don't want to be disadvantageous. Pay fair rent, get a fair value of a home, and now you can work as a fair uh, landlord operating a business in this great country. Because again, we still have to provide homes and housing for people, and not everybody's going to be a homeowner.
Right. And I'm familiar with the U.S. model as well
Oh,
because
nice.
I lived in the U.S. for many years. Gave up my citizenship, so now I'm just Canadian. But no, it is. It's one of those things. It's like when I came here, I'm like, what? You mean what? How you ask all those questions? I'm like, okay. And they talk about affordable housing, but no one defines it or define
Exactly.
it differently. It's like, oh, it's 30% of your income, but it's like for whom? For everybody that's in a fair market housing? Or because is the government going to cover that remaining piece, or is it only going to be in government housing? So it gets very confusing. I mean, I'm fairly knowledgeable, but there's times where they use that term, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Please define this so the general public can understand because they don't. They think,
That's
oh,
right.
this person's making a ton of money here and a ton of money here. And it's like, there's a reason why government should be building housing for people who are, need housing and can't afford market value. But define that. And then if you're saying, oh, the big developer, you need to put 30% of, you know, subsidized housing in. It's like, well, who's paying the other 70%? I totally get it because it's like, I mean, having worked in, two different markets and two different, regimes as far as, buying and selling real estate, there's some things here that are easy and some I'm just, I throw my hands up like you do. It's like, what,
That's
hello?
right.
How, you want people to be entrepreneurial, but you're putting all these roadblocks that say, well, but you can't do that, but you can't do that, but we're going to do this, but you can't do that. Uh, and I think that
That's right.
the city taxes and utilities, so water, sewer, garbage. It's like, okay, it's gone up 10-15% a year for the last 2 years, but the landlord now can only recover 5% of that
Right.
or 25%. No, it would have been 25%. Sorry, 25%. The landlord can only cover 5%. That 20% now comes out of 2 more months rent. So you're saying, I think I really liked your analogy. It's like, when we take these pieces apart, I do the same thing when someone's saying, well, your commission is too high. I put six loonies on the table. I'm like, these three go to the other person. That leaves three. My broker takes one. Marketing and promotion take one. There's one left. That's mine. And I pay tax on that. So I get half of that.
Very good analogy. It's true.
So I think it helps people understand, and that's why I really like that. I'm going to steal that and make it my own in some way, but I'm going to ask your permission to
Yes.
do that because I think it's a really good thing when people say, "Well, landlords making all this kind of money." It's like, hang on, let's have this discussion. I'll put 12 down on. It's like, okay, these are the 12 months of the year. A, B,
Yes.
C. And I think it really helps people sort of. I think what we need to do, sort of amongst ourselves and then move up to that political level is, it's education. It's like, let us help you understand what it is. When you do this, what happens to us? When we do this, what happens to the tenants? So it's like,
That's right.
because I think because otherwise people like myself are like, I've had these bad experiences. Why would I want to do that? Because
Exactly.
I don't feel like I've got anyone behind me that's going to be like, well, you're doing the right thing. Yeah, it's like, so I get that. I totally get that where that's coming from. Thank you for that. It really helps kind of clear these things up. So I know that you have a podcast. Yes.
Yes,
And it's called the Pineapple Podcast, like the one
that's
behind
right.
your shoulder here. So
An Apple podcast with Mitch Parmasar.
tell us about the podcast.
So right now we're on YouTube.
Mhm.
We are working to get it done. We have a few episodes on Spotify, but we're gonna get that up and running, and we're gonna be on Apple as well. So we want to be where everybody is. But the whole purpose of the Pineapple Podcast is really just to have some fun, to share success stories with different people in their journey in real estate. Some of the challenges we have.
Mhm.
And a big piece of it as well is just like this, sharing insights, sharing information so people know how to think like a business, even though it's real estate, because far too often we think, okay, we're a real estate investor and we buy one or two houses and that's it. It's like, no, you could actually develop this into a significant business to get you into financial freedom. It can also get you into to a state where a lot of people that I've spoken with, they have different passions. They have different things they want to solve. A lot of them, they want to have a fight to cure diabetes and cancer. Some of them want to provide housing and social housing. Some of them want to go internationally and help society get to a better place. But they're bogged down because they got a bills to pay. They still have to work 9 to 5, and there's only 24 hours in the day. So that energy dissipates. Our belief at the Pineapple is if you're able to really get into understanding real estate, learn from it, develop your platform so that you become financially free, so that you can go do these greater things in life. I think what we're passionate about is we're enabling visionary leaders to achieve their visions in life. And I think that vision is going to take society up to a whole different game.
Well, and I think it helps level the playing field by people who, feel like they can't.
Yes, exactly.
Because, where it's like, well, I can't. I have people like, well, I'll never afford a house. It's like, well, what if you planned for it?
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing with my first time workshops, first time homeowner workshops. I said, this is a planning, this is a planning workshop. You need to, it's like, let me just give you 5 points that are going to blow you away, but that's how you plan. And then
Yep.
figure out with each of these professionals in time what you need to do and take the plunge. So I think I had this discussion recently with people around younger folks, so that 18 to 32 age group, and a lot of them are saying, well, they know they're never going to be able to afford a house, so they're just spending all their money. I'm like, oh, it's one of those, like, it doesn't dawn on me because I admit I'm a boomer. I grew up poor, like poor. We grew our own food. I shoveled snow. I mowed lawns. I, didn't get, I never had a monthly allowance. That didn't exist in my family. So it's like, um, when you have everything handed to you, there's no sense of, oh, I should save, or I should plan, or I should.
Mhm.
And
True.
that whole sense of, like you were talking about, knowing what your cash flow is. Because I've managed a few businesses and I helped my dad get his business out of the hole. I'm like, half of everything you take in goes away. You can't touch that. Now pay your bills with the other half. And then if you have something, my favorite story is I took over my dad's business for about 9 months. And he was way in the hole, like more than my mother even knew. And I said, well, let me take it over and let me get you working. And I gave him a $5 bill every week. I said, this is your spending money. And he would scream and holler at my mother. He's only giving me $5. But in 6 months or 9 months, I basically handed him his books and I said, you'll never go in the hole again. I've showed mother how to take care of this. You do what she tells you to do. And he was never in the hole again. But it's
Very
like
nice.
you have to plan for it, or you have to have that numbers thing. You have to plan for it because
Yeah.
the banks are going to change the rules, the government's going to change its rules, the interest rates are going to change, money's going to change. That change is a constant. And in real
Yeah.
estate, change is a constant. And it's like, okay, how do we like flow with it rather than fight it? Because when we fight it, it becomes very painful. But
Love it.
there's
I gotta say, I love what you're sharing there, because that is the exact philosophy that gets you to a better place. Like I said, with my development workshop, we actually spend 3 days in planning. That's the first thing we do. You come into the workshop, you've signed up. What are we gonna do? Before we get into the real estate side of things and how does that work? 3 days to plan. What is your business? Where are you gonna take it to? What is the revenue target? What are the resources you need to get there? Can you get the resources? Then you need to rejig the plan. I mean, I'm hearing what you're saying there, and I'm like, you're spot on. That is exactly what that level of investor, young adult need. They need to focus on that planning. So amazing, amazing that you're doing that.
Yeah, and I get more and more. I mean, I get clearer and clearer every day I'm doing stuff because it's like I'm helping people build wealth. I don't just, it's like I don't sell real estate.
That's it. That's right.
Really. Oh, my favorite was a client said, "Well, realtors are good for one thing. They can drive us around." I almost hit the client in my head. I hit them. I was like, You have no concept of what we do." And as I
Absolutely.
work with young realtors, I'm like, the first thing you need to do is have a line of credit. Don't start in this business if you do not have a line of credit, because you will not succeed.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And it's like it's planning. It's like start there, then take your classes, and knowing that that's going to be another 2 grand, and then you're going to license, and that's going to be another 3 grand. It's like, and you haven't even signed in with a brokerage yet, and you're already 10 grand in the hole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
are.
That's right.
It's like,
That's right.
you have to
You're
figure
building
it's
a
like
business.
building a business. Like you have this.
Invest first,
It's
right?
always
Yeah.
like that. It's like, how do we do our goal is to do this. And I think realtors are like that. How do we get to here? Investors are like that too. It's like, there's got to be this hard work that's going to
Yeah.
take us to this plateau.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think we speak the same language, just in kind of different rooms, for lack of a better term.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about your coaching and developing program. I haven't known a lot about that, so I think we can sort of flesh that out a little bit here.
Sure. We operate with this year we're going to launch. Usually, what I do is I launch a business training webinar, and once I set those dates up, which will be in February, I'll share those with you as well.
You too.
But the idea is that we get into a space where we can do that training as a collective team or group of people that we work with, and then after we do the 3-day training, we basically stay together for the next year to make sure that people are actually achieving their goals. To me, the biggest success is not to come and learn, but to come and show success. So we've been doing that. The other thing that we're working on this year as well is we created a buying group for multifamily. So if you actually do want to get into the multifamily space, again, just reach out, book with me. That's a direct one-on-one conversation where we kind of go through the proprietary methodology we use for analyzing properties so that you get a hands-on experience of how do you do this, because again, you need to learn that whole method of how to decide if you're going to move forward with a property or not. So we train you on that, and then we work together to buy the property, whether it's through the group effort or you want to go independently, we'll help you navigate that as well. So we do those programs right now. And then the other thing that we're going to be working on this later in this year is a program for helping youth determine what is the career path, how do you plan for the financial side of it. So really excited about that as well, because that's a piece that's going to really make a big impact or a big difference for our business.
Yeah, it will. I mean, I think it's figuring out how to reach youth, because I've been struggling with that, with trying to bring these 20 somethings.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I'm too busy and that's not going to fit. And, it's like, okay. And some of them are, they're in careers and they're making advancements. And some are just like, well, I'm not in the house buying mode. Like, I'm not in the house buying mode either, but I'm in the education mode.
That's right.
Because someone's going to ask you, oh, do you know somebody? It's like, yeah, I know this person because I took their workshop and I knew what they helped me learn something that I didn't learn. So,
Nice.
from your coaching and your planning, you create a mastermind basically for a year that
Yeah, we
supports
worked
people.
together for a year. On
Yeah.
the coaching side as well, we do some one-on-one coaching programs
Mhm.
because some people, they just have specific needs.
Yep.
So again, that's a reach out to me directly. Again, Mitch, you can reach out on mparmasar@gmail.com.
Everywhere. We're your go-to in the GTA. Real estate done in a brand new way. Fun and hip, agent style so chic. Making deals every day of the week. From penthouses to cozy boats, navigating all the roads. Stylish team shaking hands, mapping out your future plans.